everyone, what's up? My name is Joss and welcome back to my channel squibblesreads. Today I'm going to be doing the first of my two videos that I'm going to be making in my 16 favorite books that I read in 2016, and I phrase it that way because I did read all of these books in 2016, however they did not all come out in 2016. Some of them are a little bit backlisted. I don't really have any particular ranking or anything, but I have kind of just like delineated between books 9 to 16 and books 1 through 8. However, like within those 9 to 16, all of them are just kind of like whatever, like interchangeable, and within those 1 to 8, again, all of them are interchangeable. I mean, all of these books are things that I rated 4 stars and above, most of them 4.5 stars and above, and if you have seen any of my videos and the way that I rate books, I usually am very stingy with my 4+ star ratings. But yeah, the books that I mentioned today are in no particular order, but they are my faves, but a little bit less my faves than books 1 through 8. If that kind of makes any sense, I'm going to shut up now. Let's just get into the books. The first book that I'm going to talk about is Dragonfish by Vu Tran. This is kind of a neo-noir type mystery. It revolves around a guy named Robert who is a police officer in the city of Oakland in California. His ex-wife Susie that broke up with him a couple of years ago has gone missing, and she has married a really shady new dude who is involved in the underbelly of Las Vegas, which involves a lot of gambling, smuggling, crime, and most of that community is made up of Vietnamese people. He goes to Vegas to try and figure out what happened to her, and he gets involved in kind of like this really high-risk environment and uncovers some things that have happened in the past. This book does involve some violence and graphic scenes, so if you are sensitive to that, then just be warned heading into this. I loved the way that the book was set up. It just kind of had this dark, seedy feel to it. Like, all of the scenes were taking place in like a very dark room just lit by like one swinging overhead lamp. Maybe I've just like seen way too many movies, but that's what I pictured a lot of the scenes to be like. Dragonfish was totally unique. I really enjoyed every single thing about it. Up next we have Paperweight by Meg Haston. This follows a girl named Stevie who has been diagnosed with an eating disorder, and she's now going to an eating disorder rehab facility. I love this book because of the way that the therapy practices were run, both ethically and just kind of like emotionally, that type of rapport between a therapist and a client. Meg Haston herself is a counselor, which it does say in her bio. It also describes kind of just like a therapist's scope of practice, the way that they run their groups, and like in terms of client resistance also goes through that really well. In addition to that, I also just loved how real and raw the portrayal of Stevie's like anguish and anger was, and how the author was just really open and unrelenting with being like, this is how much distress she is feeling. Just because you don't feel this distress doesn't mean that she isn't. And I was reading some of the reviews, and reviewers did not like it because they found her to be just like so angry. And I just feel like part of this book is just an exercise in sitting with other people's discomfort. So it like doesn't necessarily have to be your discomfort, but Stevie was angry, she was uncomfortable, and I found that this was just a really good portrayal of what was actually going on for her. And I really appreciated how much Meg Haston just like went for it. I would put a trigger warning on this book for depression and of course eating disorders. So just know that heading into it. I thought that it was just a really great, solid book, and also just really pretty aesthetically. Also, just a quick note, I just looked at my Goodreads and realized that I read this in very late 2015, like the last few weeks. So, I mean, that doesn't really affect it. I still really loved it and I still would really recommend it, but just in case you think I'm a little bit of a fraud, you checked my Goodreads. We also have a really kick-ass sci-fi novel called Arabella of Mars by David D. Levine. I met David D. Levine at BEA. He was doing a signing there, and part of my experience with this book is that I met him there, and he was just so genuinely excited to be at the signing and to talk to people about his book. I find that that sort of like genuine excitement just really came across really well to me, and like he gave me a button, and it just made me really excited to read this book. Okay, so the book is actually about Arabella, who is a human girl. She was raised on Mars by a Martian nanny. She knows like the language and mannerisms and all of that. Something bad happens with her family that sends her back to Earth, and then she finds out there has been some sort of betrayal or like self-serving behavior with the family that is on Earth, so that sends her back to Mars, and the way that she gets there is by joining this ship full of sky pirates that are heading there. To get on the ship, however, she does have to dress up as a boy, so there is that kind of like Mulanish type trope in there. It was really just a bunch of fun, and I was really enthralled by the action and the emotion. I really loved the first third of this book, and I stayed up really late to read it. That is absolutely like not saying that the last 2/3 were bad. bad because the last 2/3 were just as good as the first third. But I did love how plucky and smart and just like full of energy that Arabella was. And this is an awesome sci-fi book, so definitely recommend if you want an awesome sci-fi book. Next, we have The Listener by Rachel Bosch. I don't really know how to explain this without giving too much away, but it surrounds a dude who is a therapist or counselor at a university. One day, a person who the narrator thinks is a girl named Leah walks through the door, and it actually turns out to be an old client of his called Noah. Of course, there is a lot of discussion around gender identity and just the therapeutic process and the relationship between the therapist and the client, which I really liked. I did give this book 5 stars right away. As you can see, it is a pretty small book, so honestly, if I were to change it a little bit, I would just make it a little bit longer so there could be more exploration around all of those things. I also want to proceed with caution in recommending this book because there is a lot of discussion around gender identity, and as someone who is cisgender, I don't want to make any judgments about it, for example, like the pronoun usage and just how the whole thing was portrayed, because I am cisgender and I could not find any reviews of this book that were written by someone who is not cisgender. So just putting that out there as well. Again, kind of hard to describe, but I did really enjoy it. The next book that was one of my favorites of 2016 was called One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. This, on the cover, it looks like a cutesy, like contemporary chick litty type of book. I really hate that term, but that is a discussion for a whole other day. But this one just really like hit me deep in the feels. So the plot is not the most original. So there's this woman named Emma who was married for a year to her high school sweetheart, Jesse. Jesse goes on this airplane trip and he goes missing for a while, and while he is missing, Emma meets another guy named Sam. They get engaged, and then of course Jesse has to be found, and he comes back, and Emma is stuck in now this love triangle between herself, Jesse, and Sam. There was just like this special something about how Emma's emotions were portrayed and how she was so torn, and I know that some people, reviewers, were like, oh my gosh, she was horrible, she was this, she was that. And it's like, yes, of course we can judge her from the outside. As humans, we are just naturally judgy people because everyone's view from the outside is 20/20. But this is her story and this is her reality. So, you know, if you've been with me for a while, you will know that I don't use the phrase that this book was realistic or unrealistic, because I have seen some reviews that say that a certain part in a book was not realistic, but that is actually something that has happened to me. So it was my reality. So just because it's not your reality doesn't mean that it's not someone else's. So I definitely don't ever use that term. Again, that is a discussion for another day. But I do think that the way that Taylor Jenkins Reid explored these emotions kind of just justified the whole thing for me. If you like contemporary with a little bit more, I would definitely look into this one. Next book, Deceit and Other Possibilities by Vanessa Hua. This is a collection of short stories that all revolve around the theme of first and second generation immigrants that are trying to find their voice and their footing in a new home. For example, there's this one about a Korean American pastor who has kind of like hidden motives, if you will. There's another one about a superstar that is from Hong Kong who is trying to escape after this big like sex scandal blows up. That is a story that I really liked. I also really enjoyed that the stories are linked together because some of the characters in some of the stories appear and like make little cameos in other ones of the stories. So it created that sense of community that I think is really important. Like whenever I moved, I had to find like a new community, a new group of friends. The way that the characters appeared in different stories helped create that kind of feeling. I highly, highly recommend this short story collection. Vanessa is also a great person to follow on Twitter if you're interested in that, so I can leave that link in the down bar too. I really love this next book. It hit me in a place and at a time where I just wasn't really feeling good about reading. I honestly wasn't feeling very good about a lot of things this past semester. This book is Camgirl by Elliot Wake, formerly known as and written as Leah Rader. This is about a girl named Vada who was in a really bad car accident with her girlfriend Ellis, and this left her with a lot of physical injuries as well as like some emotional distress. Vada makes money by being a camgirl, which is a job that a lot of people have some negative stereotypes and judgments about. So as a reader, if we have preconceived notions about a specific thing, in this case, about people working as camgirls or in like adult films, that is definitely something that we can check as we read and just be like, oh, this is a judgment that I'm making, and just be aware of that. There's a client named Blue who becomes more possessive over Vada over time, so there is a little bit of mystery surrounding that as well. There is exploration around gender, sexuality, and of course sex. but there is a lot of emotional distress that is explored and just written about beautifully. Elliot Wake is one of my favorite authors in terms of his writing, and he doesn't dance around tough stuff, but he also gets right to the heart of it with the style that he writes in that's very delicate, but it's also very sharp, and it's lyrical and flowy, but it's also just like really brutal. I don't know how to describe it, but it really is amazing, and I would recommend Camgirl. Finally, I really debated about leaving this one in there, but I can't not put this one in there because I was like screaming about it at 4 in the morning. I really like this whole series, and frankly the whole universe. I'm like really obsessed with it. Total trash for the series, but I especially liked the first one. The first one is Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. I'm not really gonna get into it because I'm sure a lot of people have heard about this, but I'm totally Team Darkling. And everyone is so surprised whenever I say that, but this one is Darkling trash right here. So yeah, that is books 9 through 16. Definitely stay tuned for books 1 through 8, which will be the next video that is up on my channel. If this goes up on Monday, it's gonna be Thursday. If it goes up on Thursday, it's gonna be Monday. Whatever. I definitely recommend all of the books that I did mention here. Please let me know down in the comments below some of the books that didn't really quite make your top books of 2016 and why, because I'm always interested to hear that kind of why. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I will see you in my next video. Bye.